I've been fortunate enough to realize that my brain is hardwired to see consumer behavior shifts early, model out those drivers of demand, understand what variables are moving categorical consumer markets, and match those up into actionable patterns and sequences with insane accuracy. If you haven't picked up on it yet, my content creation acts as a sort of kaleidoscope like artistic expression of that ability, providing underlying support for my conviction around non consensus market moving consumer trends. But there's also another side of that, one that a lot fewer people get to experience because of the inherent nature involving my strategic management consulting projects. Yet, this particular episode of conversational content required crossover into that other side. And that's because well before Ryan Ankrom co founded Anabar, one of the fastest growing protein bars on the market, he got deeply intertwined to an early strategic management consulting project that was within my build turnkey supplement brands for clients era. But as you'll hear throughout our conversation, all those experiences and people that we met along the way would become an important butterfly effect that led us both to where we are right now. Beyond that, Ryan and I will dive into several key strategic areas involving the last 3 years of building and scaling Anabar, including the brand's embrace of a derogatory categorical claim and its day one profit mindset that stayed consistent even with sales channel expansion. But this was definitely a different, but in a good way, type of conversation filled with many more interesting business topics. So, without further delay, here is the recent conversation I had with my good friend, Ryan Ankrom.
I think I wasted it before we hit record, but I was going to say, I got to give you a little shit because this is how this setup happened. Is because I posted something on LinkedIn. You gave me shit and you're like, hey, why have you never asked me to be a guest? And I thought to myself, Ryan's not going to be into this like dense ass, like business content. He's not going to want to sit there and talk to me for 45 minutes about all this like nerdy stuff. But it came full circle. We're here, we're doing it. Ryan, I just want to take some time, just say thanks for, kind of sitting down with me and chatting. It's going to be definitely, I think, an interesting conversation. I think we're going to get into some stuff that maybe I haven't talked about, but definitely some stuff that I think people are going to learn a ton from you and your story overall.
No, for sure. It's I know most people don't know the background, but yeah, we've known each other for quite some time, and never thought we'd be sitting down doing this. So yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I have been looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's I was trying to, and I'm not good with dates, but I was thinking when we met, it was like 2016. And I think, and this is a project I was working on with a specialty retail chain called Subzilla in Ohio. And I'd known one of the owners since I kind of got back in the industry at Muscle Farm, because he was one of our first like customers of a specialty retail small account that Corey Gregory hooked us up with. And so when I was looking for some new projects, I kind of came across something they were doing, and they were looking to expand and do a number of different things. I was thinking like operational structure stuff I was doing. I was trying to look at new like revenue levers. I think there was like some cost optimization stuff or whatever, but part of it was there was already a number of stores, and I needed to get a sense of like you guys as owners and all that. And it just so happened we drive to this town, I think about an hour south of Columbus, and you're sitting in the store, and we're chatting, and that was really where I think our story started.
Yeah. So was it Wade or Kevin? Which one?
It was Wade. I'd known Wade, yeah, since I think because him and Corey Gregory kind of ran in the similar circles back then, and that was when he first started that Newark store. That was one of the first like Muscle Farm, I think, like direct accounts, and he was ordering like one case like a month or something. But I'd talked to him on the phone a bunch, so I'd known him since that point.
Yeah, I think I want to say that one lone store was the first one in the state of Ohio to start carrying Muscle Farm. That's kind of what kicked it off. But yeah, I remember that when that whole thing started with you and Subzilla, because you came in and you just ruined everything. We had that first day is like, here's spreadsheets. You got to fill this out. You got to fill this out. And I remember that first call, we were throwing a fit. We're like, because we just had such a janky way of like, of doing stuff. And you came in, and because And then with all the like kind of streamlined stuff, it was rocky there at the beginning. I remember that for sure.
Oh, there was a lot of there was a lot of pushback, and it's funny because I recently was being definite like introspective into my like arc of my consulting kind of thing, because I started 12, 13 years ago, and I think even during that time I was still having a little bit of this, like I was way too close to like overly like structural thinking, frameworks, models, everything needed to be like this type of thing, because I was really black and white in terms of this was going to be the levers that got whatever towards success. And I think that was like right at the end when I started to like shed that as maybe like the most important thing. And I started to think about just, I needed to understand the culture of the business a little bit more. I needed to understand like what was going on, and really like probably that project was what kicked it off in the other direction, because again, like looking at it now, I would probably approach it completely different. But when I was there, I went in there and like with, I saw a bunch of nails and I'm a hammer and I'm just like, bam, 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 bam. And you guys are looking at me like, wait a minute, who is this guy and what's going on and why is he doing all this stuff? This is insane.
Yeah. What was the, because we were trying to do the like automatic reordering. I believe that was one of the big things that you implemented. I remember telling Wade, I'm like, Wade, like I only order certain things because that's all the money I have to order certain things. I was like, it's not that I want to be out of stock of C4 Blue Raz. It's just I have to pick between that one or Fruit Punch. So it's, yeah, it was definitely interesting to start, because Subzilla was such a just a nitty gritty, like, everything that Subzilla was trying to be just raw and different from, like from GNC. It was, we tried to be the stark contrast. And down to just the way the company was ran. So yeah, it was definitely rocky there at the beginning, but it's brought us all to this moment right here, I guess.
Yeah, you look back and I think that the ambitions or the aspirations of those owners, like definitely, I think I probably over accelerated a lot of things, because I think at that time sky was a limit, a lot of opportunity there. And you look back, like that was the height of like specialty retail. Like when you look at if it's GNC or Vitamin Shop or whatever that is, like the mid 2010s into like that was the time that people still, I think, came into those stores and looked for a bunch of specialty products, and like because the merchandising was there, I think there was also, there was the internet was, I mean, all that information was there, but I still think there was an aspect that people loved to like go into the stores, and it was a little bit of a third place meeting place for like meatheads. That's probably like Subzilla. I felt like you go in there and like people are coming in there to like hang out and like talk, shoot the shit or whatever it is, and like now it's a completely different landscape. But that was really the time when like specialty retail, everybody looked at it as, oh, I can create the next whatever.
Well, and that was the whole framework behind Subzilla. Because I remember, a number of brands that would go full mass market, and then we'd end up dropping them because we tried to carry the stuff that was just unique, and to think we were selling the the rip-off brand of Jack 3D for the longest time. That stuff. Remember Limitless back in the day, like before Nova Farm got there, got to where they are. So we always tried to carry those just super offshoot, just cool stuff. And then it turned into a hangout, good and bad. You got to think you're a sitting duck in that store. Sometimes the people came in for 2 hours that you didn't want to come in for 2 hours, and then you're just trapped with them. I will say it was pretty unique with Subzilla. I had this preconceived notion what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a meathead place. I thought it was going to be all these bodybuilders and fitness and just all these people coming in. And then I realized like the majority of the customer base was just middle-aged people trying to get back in shape and do better. And that I remember how like that was kind of a turning point for me. I realized like, oh, these are like these are just common people. The customer base of the meatheads was so small that it was really just your normal walk of life people that came in there to just trying to do better for the most part.
And I think the communities in which they were at, I mean, they were pretty spread out into there were some in suburbs that I think were pretty well off, and then other ones that were not so much. But I think overall, it wasn't that there was a ton of these places that were like wellness hubs or places where you can kind of come in and like, if you were trying to better your health and wellness, like there was a place for you. I think that like there was very few of those around in some of those communities. So I think it became this, kind of central hub sometimes where I think you guys were able to help, a lot of people.
Yeah, well, especially, where I was at, in Lancaster, it was just, I feel like Subzilla just fit Lancaster so well because it wasn't the kind of maybe the Dublins or the upper kind of neighborhoods of Columbus, but it also wasn't kind of the lower neighborhoods. It was right smack down in the middle. And it just, everything about that just fit so well into Lancaster. We had a GNC in the mall. And I love that store. To be honest, so a lot of times I wish I still had that store. It's just, it has so many fond memories in there. I don't know. I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the business.
So let's talk about a little bit of our evolution of our relationship, because I mentioned, part of that Subzilla project overall naturally moved into, I think, some of these creating new revenue levers and trying to think through. And I'm thinking back to that era of my consulting, and there was a number of just brands that I built. Some of them happened to fall into some of these like private labels for specialty retailers, some of them for just founders and entrepreneurs that they still exist today. It was one of those times where I think I got into a role of just kind of creating these things. And like, that was where I found a lot of my artistic expression, I guess. But one, or I guess two, or there was a number of them that I came up with for Subzilla. And the idea was that they were going to serve a purpose within the store like anybody else's kind of private labels. One of them was going to kind of serve as a little bit of a, I don't want to say, copycat or knockoff of some of the most popular products that they could obviously produce for cheaper and make better margin. And it just made sense as they were growing out their store counts. It was just overall. And then another one was more kind of specialty. But, during that time when these were getting developed and they were starting to be produced and a number of different things, the two co-owners have, a pretty, I guess, bad breakup. They start to dissolve the business. They start to think about, where they're going to go. And it's kind of left in this, I don't say like purgatory, where like, what do you do with these things? Because the person, the owner that was really interested about that initiative and wanting that to be an important thing was on one end. And then the other one that wanted to stay with the stores was not really into these things. And it was like, what do you do with this thing? And I'm left there, with a number of like hours that I put into this project, a lot of like just blood, sweat, and tears that was all going to get paid off how the revenue model made sense to turn. And I'm like sitting there going, what do I do with this, with this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting part of this is that, while some of these products first hit the shelves at your store, you had one of your like customers that kind of always was coming in there. And I think you turned him on to it. And he just so happened to be like a budding YouTuber at the time. He's like really small, but I'll let you take it from there. But like, cause I think you're a big part of like why that pivot happened, because I was ready to just kind of shut everything down and say like, this just maybe, hey, this was a loss. I kind of put a bunch of time into something. And then you presented an opportunity that took this in a different direction.
Yeah, well, so talk about being in the middle of all that. Yeah, when that whole separation happened, that was, yeah, because it was literally like, hey, choose your side. Not metaphorically. It was literally, hey, choose your side right now. Tell us which one, and we go from there. And that was obviously led me here, but also kind of was a bad, maybe not a bad decision, but got me in trouble just for being friends with one person, which was insane. But yeah, so when I started my store was October of 2015. Remington was just getting started. I think he started doing YouTube in January of 2016, and he was just looking for a place to film. He's like, hey, like, you got a cool spot? I can come in there, film, do some videos, give you some shout outs. I was, yeah, absolutely. So he would come in and film. I mean, he was in there all the time. Slowly we just became, really good friends. And then was that 2000? Was that 2017 when all the
Yeah, it
that
was like
was.
early 2017 when those things became a reality and on your shelf.
Yeah, so yeah, 2017, and he was always buying them anyways, because it was, the amino energies of the world was, we had whole shelves dedicated to amino energies. And I remember like with the aminos, got him onto them, and then he was obsessed with them. He'd come in there regularly, weekly, and buy them. So when all this stuff kind of happened, and he grew quick. I want to say he jumped over well over 100K, I believe, in that first year on YouTube. So he was kind of rock and rolling. It fit right in with what he was doing, and then it just kind of like spiraled from there. It's like, hey, we have the YouTuber. We don't have any influencers, for this company. Well, you guys didn't have any influencers for this company. Rim loves it. Let's get him a code, and then from there, I think it just showed how much it paid off for him, and that kind of rolled into, I don't know how deep we want to go into the Subzilla stuff, but then that rolled into just kind of the partnership with all of us.
And honestly, I think right at the time when we were like, hey, here's a code or whatever it was the breakup. I don't think between the Subzilla owners were even like to the forefront yet, even though it was kind of in the background. And I think we had saw the initial kind of reaction to the code of in one of the videos, and I think we were like, "Oh, that's interesting. This is something that we can kind of go with." And we didn't necessarily, I think, even consider it at the beginning, because again, these were built 100% to sit in the store. Like that was really like, even with they were built and looked a certain way, and they weren't obviously called Subzilla supplements or whatever it was. They were built in the mind that maybe they could expand out, but at the end of the day, they were built in a certain way, because even the products, the way the cost structure, everything was really just optimized for this one result. But then you had this other kind of thing that popped up, and then obviously the conflict and all those types of things. And it was one of those things where whatever the idea of it was had to completely change. And because I think of that and the timing and kind of just not necessarily thinking about that was ever going to need to happen, it was like, okay, well, this is a completely new business. Okay, let's restart this in a different way. And instead of having them be an owner as the supplement stores, it was like we needed to kind of think about new owners. And it was like, it made sense for you and for Remington to be a part of that company and kind of take on, okay, now we have this new company, and let's figure out what we're going to do with it. And at that point, it was like, okay, this is no longer a private label for a specialty retailer. This is now a brand, or at least a company that's trying to become that. And we have to think about Amazon. We have to think about all these things that really, even selling on the website, it really wasn't ever a thing that we thought of until we saw the potential when Remington put that in his first video. And then with his trajectory on YouTube and us being able to kind of ride that, the sales just naturally kind of came in. And I think the products fit perfectly into what he was doing, the type of content he was doing. A lot of that stuff just really ended up, serendipitously working out. But that was never the thought. That was never the plan. But it ended up, working out well for a while until it didn't.
Yeah. Well, I remember because that was right after Rem went on that streak. I think he did 186 videos in 186 days or something like that. He did a video every single day. So he was just in that YouTube trajectory. He was just pumping content out. So it just made perfect sense. And then it just so happened that I had this big store with a big, the whole back part of it where it was all stored and shipped. And I still have nightmares about Wade backing up and dropping off gigantic boxes and saying, count these. And then I give you inventory like, hey, you're 3 off. I'm like, oh, all right, we're 3 off. I'm going to recount these. Spending our nights there, just putting the labels on the protein on the protein jugs. So that was the epitome of bootstrap. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, that again, it was coming from a place where like there was zero invested into this business. It was like, okay, it's sweat equity on all sides in totally different ways. To your point, you got thrown the product in the back of your, what we call it a warehouse, but really it was just your back room.
What's that, 500 square feet, 600 square feet? Yeah.
And you had everybody like kind of doing their own thing in their own way and trying to make it work. And it was like, there was no, again, if people that know me, they'll probably think this is crazy, like that I didn't have this all kind of well thought out or whatever. But it was one of those things where, a mess got thrown in my lap and it was already a living, breathing thing. And you're sitting there going, okay, what do I do with this? And, quickly spin that thing up to a run rate that was into the $1 million area. And then all of a sudden the cracks start showing where, cause everybody's doing different things. Everybody has their own kind of, idea of what we should do next and where we should go and whatever. And I'm sitting there, the only person that's outside of Ohio, and I'm going like, what's going on, guys? What's happening here?
Yeah.
And I think most people will know that have been in business for a while. Like typically, partnerships, even if it's the most well thought out or not, like always, it ends up being some type of people aspect that ends up creating some rifts in partnerships. It's usually not the business. It's like the business is going well. It's usually something that's like whatever somebody, personality wise or whatever it was. And I think that, some of, there were some things going on in Ohio that was outside of me that I didn't understand what was going on that created, an ultimate breakup, which is a part of the story because I think it gets you guys into a different area. But I think it was a good learning opportunity overall that I think you guys were able to take and then move forward with, learn from, figure out what you liked, what you didn't like, and became the base of the next business.
Yeah, and I think you got to think too, just how high the emotions were at that time, anyways.
Yeah.
Look at what Wade was going through with Subzilla. Look at what I was going through with Subzilla. I'm essentially getting shut out just because I'm friends and business, and now business partners with Wade. So it was just kind of coming at all ends, not to mention now figuring out that the store is changing and Wade's life is changing and Rim's on this trajectory and you're down in Texas. And it was just, it just got to be that the crash just got too big. But me and Rim still talk about it a lot, especially the videos we did in the back of that store. And, I can only look back on those times with fond memories because I wouldn't be sitting here today without Subzilla, without the Purebotics, without the Out Hustle, without any of these things or any of these issues or problems. I literally wouldn't be here, today. Anabar wouldn't be here. None of it would be here. So it was just a journey. I don't know.
I think, you have to go through. And even as I said, I think that project fundamentally changed the way that I approach projects and the way I approach different things because of, a number of things. And, ultimately, if I look and put that on the scoreboard of is that one of my big success? No, because I think there was a lot of things that happened that ended up kind of derailing that a ton. But at the end of the day, it's one of those moments that I think build the foundation for new things and new ideas and new concepts or whatever. And on the, even when you guys went off and eventually did your own thing, even with Wade and I, it was like one of those things where we were able to kind of take that, sell, bits and pieces off, do what we needed to do and kind of move forward with that one. Because again, it really wasn't either one of our ideas to that wasn't the thing. It wasn't, it wasn't the plan. And, you try to make the best out of it. But yeah, let's move on to, and because again, this is a good transition. When that happened, and you guys moved down to Texas and you guys started, originally, I think because your background, the background of that previous business being, traditional kind of powders and things like that, you guys originally started a supplement brand because it made sense. That's what, now you guys get to do that. But I don't know, how long did you guys run that before the protein bar, the Anabar? Was it a year or two or I don't remember how long that was when you guys were doing just Final Boss Performance.
Yeah, so Final Boss launched March 19th of 2019, and then Anabar launched March 18th of 2021. So exactly 2 years. Exactly 2 years from the day that we launched Final Boss. And we launched that while we were still in Ohio. So because I had moved down to Texas originally and then came back and then went back down in late 2020. But yeah, we launched that up here in Ohio because it was all I stored a lot at my apartment, but then we also had, our manufacturer was also a 3PL, so they stored and shipped everything for us too. So it was kind of a lot of hands-off stuff for us. But it's not like we sought out wanting like it was more or less like I didn't have anything else to do at that time. I had just sold my store. I wasn't doing that anymore. I hadn't started YouTube yet. So it was kind of like, well, what do I do? I don't really have a job right now. And so we just kind of started looking into Final Boss and eventually launched it that following year. And it was really just a pet project. It was, it's not that we were doing a little bit of money, but surely nothing, extraordinary. It's something we did for, 2 years, doing roughly $250,000 a year. I was doing YouTube. That's where I was making my money. We didn't even take any money from the business until Anabar came along. It just kind of sat there and did its thing. Even Anabar, that was almost by mistake, thankfully. So, Wade reached out to us, saying, "Hey, you guys want to do a protein bar?" And we're just like, sure, we'll look into it. It wasn't something that we're like, let's do a protein bar. We want to do this. It was literally Wade reaching out. So you guys want to do a protein bar? Kind of rolled, and this was in August of 2020. August 2020. And then it launched the following year. And the day we launched, we knew we had some. I think within the first 4 or 5 days of launching, we surpassed previous year's revenue. And we were kind of like, oh, we got something. So we got rid of the company. We sold all of our supplements, rebranded, changed the website, changed everything. Literally, because we were trying to hold on to the supplements, and we realized like this is doing nothing but tying up our money. We're doing 95% of our sales as Anabar at this point. So we just discounted, phased them out, and just went full on Anabar. And it's still surreal to look back on that moment, just because you kind of do it just the natural progression of things. And I remember the night that launched, like it's the point we're calling each other. I'm calling my parents. I'm like, what in the hell is going on? And it was just like an instant thing that we're like, all right, we have something special.
Yeah, I got another like talk about that time frame, like butterfly effect that kind of got you to where you are. Because so in 2016, when I'm sitting in the back of a Subzilla store where they had kind of their main hub, a guy comes in and he has these like cut up bars, and he's like, oh, you guys should, stock these and kind of that thing. And I remember trying a few of them, and I'm like, man, these are really good, and eventually they become on shelf and you guys are selling them. And years later, I'm sitting in the home of a good friend of mine. I was having dinner with him and his family in Chicago, and he's telling me about how he wants to create this thing, and he's had trouble finding like a contract manufacturer, and he's got all these things. And I go, well, give me a sense of like what you want to do. And he tells me, lays it out, this protein bar, and I go, I got somebody for you. I think I have somebody, but he doesn't do contract manufacturing. He has his own thing that he's making, and he makes it out of a small kind of commercial kitchen, and he's doing it. And I put these two people together, and I say, hey, maybe this is going to work out for you. I think within a few, weeks or so, they're coming up with this, and they produce this bar. This bar becomes popular, and I don't mind saying it. It's not that I kind of want to take any of the credit to this, but it's like the Outright bar with Mark Lobliner. And that success, I think, changed the trajectory of that person's business, Trent, with Kehoe. And at the end of the day, like now he's a full-fledged contract manufacturer. He's doing a bunch of, really successful projects. And it just so happened that like, Wade ends up working for him, and that he reaches out to you guys, and then he has this thing. And you obviously remember the whole Be a Bar, like you were selling him at Subzilla. But that whole
I didn't
connection,
sell them, I ate them.
Yeah, you would have.
Yeah.
And you knew, like, I think when you had that bar, you realized like it was so simple, but yet so delicious. And like, you just were like, this needs to be out in more places. Like it just was something so like, I guess just like obvious, but yet sometimes when somebody makes something, they don't have, I guess, the commercial aspects of like knowing how to take this and bringing it to the world and the masses, and kind of doing those things. And it needed somebody or somebody's to do that for him. And like, he's better off, doing the contract manufacturing side of it, and then like being the creator of some of these different protein snacks and things. And I think that was really like an interesting, kind of butterfly effect, because again, he might just still be, pushing a few $100,000 worth of this product through like, local stores in Central Ohio, instead of, being this big contract manufacturer now that does your guys's product.
Yeah, that was with Bia, that was because they'd bring these cut up samples just in these like to go containers, and I would never hand them out. We would literally, me and Nate, I mean, we'd sit there and we'd just eat them. It would be like, well, let me grab one, and I'll take two more, and then, well, I'm leaving, let me take a few more. And you just sit there and you'd eat them all day. It was just, peanut butter and honey. They just slide down. That's, they were amazing. And then I remember Mark launched it at the Olympia. Was it 2018? I believe. Olympia 2018. And that was the best thing, that was the best thing Trent did. Because he had something special, he had something unique. But he was meant for the contract manufacturing aspect of it. That was the best thing he did, was to get out of his own brand and stay into that. And, look what it's turned into. It's changed my life. It's changed a lot of our lives, that's for sure. And not to mention, with, Wade being one of my very best friends, I get that intimate, I guess, relationship with him, to where, like, with our supplement manufacturer, it was just emails. I never talked to him. We'd email back and forth and back, and you could never really get anything really like cool done. And with Wade, I mean, we'll sit on the phone for 2 hours, and we'll just, because how Wade is, you get Wade in Wade mode. It's the best, because it's just like, he loves the recipe part of it. He has that palate just for what's good and what's not. And yeah, we'd sit there and just rap hours on end about flavors. That's why, like, I will still stand by this. We have some of the coolest, unique flavors that's available right now. Not even talking about the marketing or the packaging. It's just, different cool stuff that we're able to create. And that kind of goes into, not even that we tried to do this, but, early on, one of the biggest comments we got was the sugar. That was always the biggest complaint we got. It's too much sugar. It's too much sugar. We'll still have people from time to time like, hey, you should make a lower sugar version, and then it would be the greatest thing on the planet. And it's like, well, no, it wouldn't be great anymore. It was that element to it, and I think we got that so much in the beginning, to the point where we just decided to lean into it. We're like, okay, you know what? We're a candy bar. And now that's literally what our packaging says, is for the protein packed candy bar. It's like, I always use this analogy, and I know you'll appreciate it, but just like with what Jules did with the tobacco industry, he's like, you know what? It'd be better off if you didn't vape, if you didn't smoke, if you didn't do any of this stuff. But if you want to do like just a little bit, and you don't want the thousands of chemicals in your cigarettes, but you just want a couple, you want the nicotine, you want the flavor. That's kind of what we try to do with Anabar. It's like, look, like, we're going to have sugar. It is what it is, but it's going to be about half the sugar of a Snickers, and 5 times as much protein. So it's going to still taste great, but you're also going to have some functionality to it. That's originally what I said to call it. I was like, the functional candy bar, and then Rem's like, oh, the protein packed candy bar. So it kind of works that we just leaned into our biggest complaint was the sugar. It's like, we don't want to be the zero sugar, non-GMO, gluten-free, no zero of all this stuff. It's like, that's not who we're meant to be. There's plenty of companies out there that can do that and are doing that and do it very well. But we have kind of played into our own little category here with what we're doing. And that's kind of where the store kind of comes in, because when I had the store, that's when, the Fit Crunches, that's when, remember the best bar ever, Mountain Dog, the kind of higher calorie bars, but just had some, that's what everyone was buying. At least that's what like a lot of people bought, outside of, of course, Quest and the ones like that. But people, especially in the 2020s, taste is just as important. This isn't the early 2000s when you're getting what were the MetaRx ones called? The Colossal 100s
Yeah.
that were just absolutely disgusting. But you ate them because you were a meathead. You know what I mean? So and the landscape is so different nowadays. Fitness is popular. Fitness is cool now. Going to the gym is cool. But those people, like, it has to taste good. So that's we just kind of flop back in into this like lane or pocket or category, and we're just kind of staying right there. And honestly, I think it's the best thing that we ever could have done.
Yeah, I remember a conversation a few years ago, I think when you guys were playing around with that tagline and changing it over, and you kind of mentioned it to me, and instantly I was like, yeah, lean into that, because I think part of that
that's
is
exactly what you said.
Yeah, I think because part of it is like a lot of times I think people try to be everything to everyone, and they try to put on this show and whatever. At the end of the day, it comes down to understanding who you are, and more importantly, who you aren't. So when you get those questions, it's like, hey, there's other options out there for you. More than happy for you to buy those ones, but like, this is who we are. We're leaning into this part of it, and we think this is good. And to your point around like there's still that joke around protein bars outside of the fitness space, outside of the nutrition space. When you get into like you talk to these big CPG companies and they talk about protein bars, they'll always be like, it's a just candy bar with protein. And part of me goes, yeah, you know what? That's what's wrong with that? Because ultimately everybody's on this, like, I guess, journey of like where they are in their needs for products. And sometimes they are trying to go from, a candy bar to something better. And maybe that's it. Or maybe they are somebody super serious that wants to get a more indulgent, pleasant tasting snack instead of having to eat cardboard all the time because that's what they're told to do and whatever. Where I think like people try to think that that's like in a bad area. I think that's a bad positioning, but ultimately I think it's actually a great position because it puts you both in such a mainstream like growth area, but then also in an indulgent area of the health and wellness space where people can look at that and go, yeah, maybe I don't want to eat that every single day, 4 times a day or whatever it is. But if I'm going to choose a treat, that's just as good as tasting as something that is full of chemicals or full of all these different things like that has no protein, that has anything. So at the end of the day, I mean, like, I think it's a great thing to lean into because like it's such a distinction in the market because everybody else is trying to not be that. And you're just kind of saying like owning it. We are that. Like, what's wrong with that?
And I think, and that's, because everything nowadays is about balance. And I kind of argue with people sometimes. Like, I think Anabar is balance. I think you could sit down at night and you could, scarf down or, choke down a Quest bar, which I can't say. Obviously, Quest is the biggest of the baddest of the baddest. And I've eaten a ton of Quest bars. But I'm kind of at that part now where it's like, well, maybe I don't want to eat a candy bar and I don't want to eat a Quest bar, but I'm not doing a show. I'm just trying to do better. I'm just trying to watch what I eat and go to the gym. And I eat one every single night. That's my after dinner type of snack. And that's exactly where we wanted to fall into. And it's, you always told me to get on LinkedIn. And when I finally got on LinkedIn, I think it was last year, and which I love it now. But I feel like LinkedIn, you scroll and you get the perception that no one eats sugar, carbs. Everyone does organic. They drink water, eat kale, and everything else is the devil and Satan and everything else. And I'm just like there's nothing wrong. Like, because the big thing now is, Feastables? Is that what's called?
With Mr. Beast?
Mr. Beast and
Prime
and,
with
that whole thing, the new Lunchable or whatever.
Yes, Lunchly.
Yeah, that was a Lunchly. Yeah, Lunchly. That was a meltdown. On LinkedIn for a while, and it's just like, you don't like it, don't eat it. It's that simple. And I honestly love what we're doing. I think that was, I remember where I was the day that I was talking to you about. I was driving back from the warehouse talking to you about the protein pack candy bar, and that's exactly what you said. I guess I think that's the best thing you could do. It's like, what are you going to say about us? We're calling ourselves that at this point.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because going back to the original, like the Subzilla, and I always say a part of my superpower as a strategist is that I was not born on the coastal like elites of like I was LA or New York or Miami or these things, because I think you get a false sense of like the trends or like what the reality is of like mass consumption. And when you're talking about CPG, the most successful you'll ever be is when you start to, move past the early adopters and into that majority and into the mainstream. And the reality is like to get those people, you have to think like middle America. You have to think like the Midwest. You have to think like everything. So growing up in Ohio, and again, you had the store. So you spoke to these people every single day, and you knew even like what they were thinking about, where they were at with trends, because you might see things being in the weeds of like the space and being passionate about supplements and being passionate about all these, health and wellness things. Like you're arguably a lot further along with a lot of these things. And you're like, oh, it looks like this is really getting popular or whatever. And then you speak to the people in the store and you maybe mention something to them and all of them go, I've never heard of that. I don't know what that is. I don't know. And it makes you realize like a lot of things are a lot slower in adoption than where they are, or where people actually are much different than where they are, I think, in terms of where people think New York or LA or wherever. Arguably, most people are just trying to make better decisions each day. And they aren't trying to go from 0 to 100, where all of a sudden they're McDonald's and then they go over to like kale 24/7. Like that's not the reality. But LinkedIn is like this microcosm, I think, of, even if it's not coastal elites, it's people that I think perceive themselves in a certain stature, and they maybe are more well off, and maybe they have the ability to make those choices. And maybe they, even if they don't make them all the time, they act like they make them all the time. I don't know. I tell people all the time, I still have a white trash palate. I eat crap all the time. I'm never going to change that. That's just how I am. I'm not going to put on some show to say that I eat, perfectly all the time, because I don't know anybody else. I mean, I just got back from the largest, nutrition supply side show in the world, and you spend time after the show with people and you see how they eat and they drink and they do all these types of things. They're not who they say they are a lot of times online, and it's even different. Like talk about the bodybuilders and things like that. When you would go to like the Arnolds or the Olympias, the same thing. They would like when it was after hours, like they became the real person of who they were, not the show, kind of person that they had to perceive them or put themselves out there to be. So I don't know. It's interesting that like all these kind of commonalities come together over time, or things that you can kind of pull from previous experiences, because I do think like there's a lot of that foundational stuff that it takes hindsight, I think, to realize it, but then you realize and appreciate like how important it was to be in that store, to be in Ohio, be in like all these things that like comes together to, this brand that now you're building, that ultimately I think is going to, continue to do extremely well because of what you guys are doing in terms of the flavor, the composition of the product, it's such an important part of that aisle, I think, of the merchandising, because there are people that are just going in two different directions, and they're not necessarily like somebody that's just trying to find something that tastes extremely well, that has a high amount of protein. Like there's not a lot of those options on the shelf at this point. It used to be 10, 15 years ago, I think, a lot more indulgent ones. Now it doesn't seem like those are around as much.
And the thing that I've noticed too, and the ones that are, like, you wouldn't know because they're not advertised like that.
Yeah.
I don't think too many really at all are advertised like us to really, because we even now, like, we went from the matte wrappers to like glossy wrappers just to get more of that candy bar look to it, to get people to grab it. We go with it's kind of, we took it from the Pure Bolics playbook, was the names. The cool as a cucumber, the punch out, kind of those different names, with the Death by Peanut Butter, the Monster Cookie, kind of the different. We're trying to hit all avenues to not just have it taste good and people to enjoy it, but to get them to grab it to begin with. And that's why, like, with the down from the flavors to the colors to the names, we're trying to hit all these different things to get people just to grab it, because we know if people try it, they're gonna love it. And there's a few other brands out there that are absolutely amazing tasting, but they're not advertised that way. And that was a big thing when we got started, is we didn't want to be this combat bar. We didn't want to be this certain, I absolutely hate this phrase that I'm about to say, but a gender neutral type of brand, to where like Like my mom has not stepped foot in a gym in her 64 years of her life, and she loves them. And meatheads love them, and my dads love them, and my sister loves them, and you know anybody can enjoy what we have, um, and that's what we wanted to be. We wanted to work for everyone, and honestly, I think that's going to be our best path to success is to get people to enjoy the product, to get them to grab the product, and for it to serve a purpose.
I want to talk about a little bit because you mentioned briefly the launch strategy at the beginning. You guys used a little bit of the, I would say, like the apparel kind of like you guys dropped, a certain amount, it would sell out, and then you'd be out of stock. Like in CPG, it's not typically a strategy because like out of stocks are not good so much in CPG.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're selling online, I mean, you could do those things. You build up hype, you build up, that thing, and then the next launch and the next launch. But then from that point, and it's only been 3 years, but like 3 years, you've moved from that to now I don't know what your store count is, but you're in major retailers, major, like from grocery, like HEB, they're down here. I know in convenience stores like Sheets. You had been, I think initially it was probably an evolution where you guys were in, I think GNC at first, where like, specialties obviously is something that you understood, but not specialty at that level of like that many
Mm-hmm.
stores. So like, how did you transition in your mind from like, we're going to do these drops where we sell out like in a day to all of a sudden I have to keep inventory and I got to understand the demand planning. I got to understand all these types of things because it's such a wild 3 years to go from one to the other.
Yeah, so I mean, when we launched, again, it's not something we were trying to do. We were wanting to launch closer to Thanksgiving the previous year, and as you now learn, just add 6 months onto everything that you're trying to do. So it just got to the point where we were talking about it. Like Rim was just every single day on his channel talking about month after month, and people are like, "What do we do? Like, launch it, drop it," and we're just waiting on packaging. We're waiting on to finalize all this stuff. So when we did finally drop it in March of 2021, we had just been talking about it for so long that people just jumped in. At this point, we had other YouTubers talking about it. We had, of course, we had all the bad videos that were coming out about us, about the product, and it just brought all this attention to it that we dropped it. It sold out. But the problem is it sold out, and then we had an issue with the first launch. We were in the 3PL over in California, and it took them almost 3 weeks to get everything out. They're like, they eventually told us we had to get it out. We had to get our own warehouse because they said, hey, we're at the accounting department down here packing your stuff. Like you gotta do something. We can't be doing this every single launch and then going back to like normal everyday orders and then big influx. And that's when we got the warehouse in Houston. The progression into retail it wasn't even by design. Again, it was people reaching out to us saying, hey, I'd like to buy this for my store. I'd like to do wholesale. And, I'm literally making up wholesale numbers, which was way too low in the beginning. I'll tell you that much. I'm like, what did I buy Quest for at the store? It's like, I'm like, that was not a good plan at first. So we just had stores reaching out to us about picking us up. And then we was like, yeah, sure. And it got to the point where it's just like, well, now we're 80% retail. 85% retail compared to our website. And, the GNCs, which weren't even people we had to go after, GNC was in our customer support inbox. Oh, 2 weeks later, Vitamin Shop was in our customer support inbox. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. The first place we reached out to was HEB. And I will say, like, people in Texas are obsessed with HEB. And they are just as amazing, like, to deal with, like, on the business side as they are at the customer level. Like, they are so easy. HEB is amazing. And it just really just spiraled from there to where, we got into, the Sport Lifes, the Muscle Foods, the Sheets. Sheets is our newest one, the big one. And, to the point where now we're just over 6,000 retail locations in the United States, not counting Canada. And, this is, we're about 3.5 years old at this point. So we did those 6,000 roughly in 2 years because the first, year and a half, we were just website. But it's a lot of this stuff we had just mistakenly done. One of the best things is like get that failure to launch, that everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be right and ready. And I think with Anabar, one of the best things we did, I think me and Rim one day were like, fuck it, launch it. It's at this point we picked at it, we prodded at it, we tried to figure out all this stuff, just put it out there. We got so sick of doing that, we're just like, hey, let's launch and we'll figure it out as we go. And we made a lot of mistakes, as I said about the wholesale, the prices on that. We made a ton of mistakes, but you fix it and you move on. That's why when people ask me what my job is with Anabar, it's like, well, a lot of it is just playing whack-a-mole all day. It's just a problem comes up, you handle it, and then it pops a new one up, and you handle it. And I know every business owner feels like this, but it's like at every waking moment, you feel like the thing's going to explode into a million pieces, which has definitely been something you have to learn to live with after a little bit. But I don't know. The retail side of it has been amazing for us, because I think if we get people to see it and to try it, then we're in there, and we can move on to the next one. We've been very blessed. I know we've done a lot of things right, and haven't stepped on too many landmines, I would say. And I also I wouldn't want to grow any faster than what we did, because I don't think we would have been able to handle it. I think that would have been extremely detrimental for us. I think we grew just fast enough and just good enough to get us to where we're at and still be alive today. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's like now you have enough of, I guess, I always say, like, there's a false sense of confidence, like, because the end of the day is like, yes, you have this experience, you've made these mistakes, you kind of are able to, not hopefully make the same ones again, but then new variants of those mistakes, and sometimes they come faster and bigger, and you have to kind of use the previous patterns and try to assess, is that going to work out or not. And I think that what you mentioned around the pace of the growth, it was strong and definitely noticeable, from even some of the large players kind of paying attention, but also not so much that if you did make a mistake, that was going to be the mistake that put you under. And I think it creates a good base that now, as you have really great sell through and different things in some of these key retailers, now it's a matter of, okay, probably understanding when you say yes to things and how quick you say yes to things, because it's more a matter of now that, like, most people are interested in bringing in the product. It's more from a standpoint of, how do we pace these out? How do we make this make sense to us, so then we can keep this going? Because at this point, like, everything's been self-funded correctly. Everything is, you guys are running off of internal profitability and everything like that. And not that protein bars are the lowest margin thing in the grocery store, but it's also not far from the highest margin thing in the thing. So, like, when you're talking about building in all of these store counts that need all of this inventory, and you have distributors and all these different layers, like, you can only push this so far and so fast with the way you guys are doing it. So you have to understand what you're doing in terms of that timing on some of these things. So saying no, you mentioned before, like, you said yes to everything at the beginning, but now if you said yes to everything, it would be trouble, because you really have to understand, like, is this going to be good? Even from not only getting into the retailer, but even when you're talking about distributors and everything like that, everyone has all these different programs, all these different things. And a lot of times you feel like you have to say yes to everything at the beginning. And then you realize there are certain ones that definitely are more important than others. And you get a sense of that over time, and you get better at that. But you even talk to some of the brand owners and things that are doing hundreds, if not billions of dollars, and they still struggle sometimes at understanding all these different levers and which ones they have to do and which ones they don't have to do. So it's never gets, I would say, easier, but it probably you get a little bit more of that, I guess, experience to be able to handle them in a more efficient way.
Yeah, and we've said no a lot in the recent years. If a retailer comes along and it's the 90-day terms or the fee schedule is too insane, or some of the big distributors that come out and it's just they want to take 25% right off the top. It's like, okay, is this going to help us or hurt us? Is this just going to tie up inventory and money where we're ultimately not going to make any money? And we've learned to say no to a lot of those. thankfully, with the mistakes we've made, even with the mistakes we made, we've been profitable since day one, which is, what I'm finding and hearing from a lot of different people is kind of rare, where a lot of people are like, oh yeah, we don't make any money in that account. And if we don't make money from an account, we pull out. We've done that a couple of times. For the simple fact is, it's me and Remington. We're a 50-50 on this company. I need paid. I am gone is the day of me, living off of top ramen and small apartments. Like I do this, I pour my blood, sweat, and tears into this. We've had this company for almost 4 years now. Like we are getting paid. And I don't see the point of, which I did at the beginning, but I don't see the point of raising our top line revenue just to say we're raising our top line revenue. I'd much rather stay at 10 million and be profitable than be at 25 million and not be profitable. And now we're burning $1 million a month and just useless shit. So we've been very careful about that. And we've also brought on, some good people. I know, one of our salesmen, Arturo.
Mm-hmm.
He has been absolutely vital. I would say him and Max Tuning have been the most important people that we've talked to and consulted with just as this thing went on. We lean on Max a ton just with, hey, what do you know about this account? Or what do you think about this? Or, there's different questions there. We're in his old, Sour Ships warehouse down in Texas. We took that over. And then with Arturo, he had, sought us out and we had spoken a couple times and he just gave us some really good advice. He's like, hey, raise your prices, do it today. What are you doing? That's where the whole wholesale thing came in. So we've been luckily just have good people. I've talked to you a number of times and, in the early beginning. We have good people around us. And while our team consists of a total of 5 people, to this day, we've been blessed with good people and good situations and good opportunities. And I think, one of the best things we did was take our ego out of it. So it's, I want to be $100 million company. I want that. I want the Dr. Pepper acquisition. I want all that, but we can't do it dirty. We have to, where I'm at with my life and where Rim's at, we have to build this business in a smart and controlled way, or it's just going to implode. So we're trying to do it a little differently. We kind of slowed down. We got a little smarter. And we're just trying to run a clean business. And in 2024, that's definitely not easy to do. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think luckily enough, I think you not even understanding the sense that people lose money at the beginning ends up putting you in an advantage during the time when everybody had to learn how to be profitable, when their models or what they thought could take a while to become profitable. They had to retroactively change their business model to do that. And a lot of them struggled with that. A lot of them, kind of were not able to do that, where you didn't know that there was really another way. And like, this is the way you got to do it. And that actually becomes like a superpower at the end of the day, because you are able to, I guess, come up with solutions that are creative, frugal, but creative in ways that, like, what's going to create the biggest impact? What's going to actually get us to where we need to go? And over just sometimes making the easiest, lowest common denominator answer to things because you have the money to do that, because it's arguably somebody else's money. You guys didn't have that as a thing to do. So you had to do things that were currently, I guess, a strategic advantage in the sense that, like, your brain was already wired for what needed to happen over these last couple of years. Because I don't know if you've paid attention to the general landscape, but if you look, either there's been a lot of closures, or a lot of just people fizzled out. You're like, where'd that brand go, or whatever it is, and a lot of them just couldn't make it work. It just didn't make sense because their business model was not going to make a profit, and the money dried up, the external capital dried up, and now they're no longer there, where you're able to kind of do it a different way and try to outlast them. And I think ultimately, the pace of this and going to, if it's $100 million, whatever arbitrary number, like, there's no rush to that. I think a lot of people think there's a rush to that. You want to build a business that is attractive regardless. You don't want to have to take on external money or take somebody sell the business, whatever those things are. You want to make sure that, like, you're as attractive as you can be, but you don't need anything. That's when you end up getting the best offers, the best things, because you have leverage. You have ultimately, you can make and dictate some of the terms over building everything for this result that maybe doesn't come because there's some other external thing that throws you off.
Well, I knew that we didn't, we've always been open to the investors. We've always been, have had a number of phone calls, over the past, year or so with, potential investors. Just none of them made sense. We didn't want to go the raising money route. We didn't want to turn this into having 10 different owners of the company and doing all these rounds. And it just didn't make sense to us. We tried to play the common sense game, especially with accounts. We look at an account. If this doesn't make sense, okay, we're going to do all this and not make any money. Okay, no, we're not doing it. We say no. And then two, with Remington has been absolutely vital for us. We didn't spend any money on marketing for the first year and a half, since we launched, because we had Remington's organic YouTube traffic to continuously feed us. So we had a zero marketing budget up until December of 2022. And then we finally got into ads and doing that whole thing. So I think a lot of it, some of it's dumb luck, some of it's good timing, some of it's, which I think is severely lacking nowadays, is common sense. If it doesn't make perfect sense to us, we're not going to do it. I want to say that I have Costco. I want all these gigantic accounts, but like we can't handle that. We can't do that. We can't give our product away for that price. It's dollars and cents. We're going to lose money. We all need paid. We got to pay everybody else. We can't do this. Hey, some other time down the road, we'll look at it. And I think the growing fast but slow has been, we literally wouldn't be here if we did this any other way. So we just try to turn every mistake into, a lesson learned, fix it, and, move on.
Well, Ryan, I appreciate the conversation. I know that a little bit different because we added a ton of different layers to this. I think for my audience, they're used to me, kind of having a certain way in which these go. And I think we added a lot more personal things. Hopefully people were able to follow along because I tried to at least give enough context so it wasn't like inside stories. But Ryan, I mean, I appreciate the chat, the time, everything like that. This was definitely a great conversation. I think a lot of people are going to get some good stuff out of this.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I know it's we've had a long history together. Some great, some indifferent, but I'm glad we can come back to it and chat about it. I never thought we'd be doing this, that's for sure. But yeah, I really appreciate it, Josh. I know you're still killing it. You're still doing well. I see you're still rocking the J. Schall Consulting green. I love it. You still got it going.
Got to be on brand,
Yeah, that's it. I still dress like a homeless person, so don't worry. I was wearing this when we had our company, so it's I refuse to change, whether I'm broke or not. So.
But I hope you enjoyed the first principles thinking that went into my latest YouTube video. If you did, can you do me a favor by hitting that like button? That quick and free action helps YouTube know my content is worth spreading to more people. Also, we're getting really close to reaching my next subscriber goal, and it would be great if you join me on this journey. But to do that, we need to fix the fact that slightly more than 3/4 of you that are watching this video right now are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, and that hurts my feelings. Regardless, I want to thank you for giving me some of your attention and time, and I'll see you on the next one.